And that's it.
Boker Tov, thank you, Kathy. Again, thank you to Kathy and Beth for putting this whole course together. All of us are here because we know this is a product and an experience that has kind of been built and structured with your handouts and well designed. So Darabah for that. If you are very interested in this little Super Bowl game, you should know that we just posted a very fun picture. Today's the Worldwide Wrap, which is where we celebrate putting on tefillin. And we had, I don't even know, but way over 100 people participate, and our students. And one of our sixth graders was wrapping tefillin, wearing a Gronk jersey, and putting on his tefillin, and he had paint on his face, and it looked like he was like a player. And Rabbi Feld posted that, and it says, I think on Facebook, Gronk is getting ready for the big game. On his tefillin. So that's all there for everyone to enjoy. We last time, or 2 weeks ago, and if there are things that you missed, please know they are in the videos, and you can click on them, and it does follow the outline, so it's pretty actually easy. I was looking up and wanted to make sure, to see what I had covered and what I had missed, and I could pretty much find it pretty quickly on the video. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, we were covering the Amidah, the standing silent prayer, really the pinnacle of every service, and in fact, what defines a service. If you don't have an Amidah, then you didn't have a davening. That is really the core experience. Sometimes we add in Shema and its blessings, but sometimes we don't. Mincha, just really an Amidah, a little introductory material, a little bit of closing material. Think about on Yom Kippur. What is the additional service that's added on Yom Kippur? Ni'ilah, which is pretty much an extended Amidah with a long repetition, and people are coming up in our community to the Ark, but it's really just the repetition of an extended Amidah. Musaf, what is Musaf? When we add it every Shabbat and every holiday. It's basically just an Amidah. We throw in some fun songs at the end for good measure, but really the core is an Amidah. And those Amidot related to things that went on in the Beit HaMikdash, things that went on in the temple in Jerusalem. And so each one of them, related to a different kind of sacrifice, which is why I have the custom, during the week, each time I recite an Amidah, I take a little tzedakah and put it in the pushki to sort of remind me of that basic practice. Because don't forget, their system of tzedakah, of giving charity, of really paying their taxes, was all woven into the sacrificial system and the maaser system, the system of tithing, of giving 10%, of leaving the corners of your field for the poor. They had a whole system of making sure everyone in their society was taken care of, but it was built into the agricultural laws and into the laws of what took place in the Beit HaMikdash. Obviously, that wouldn't quite work out today. Looking around the room, not many of us are farmers, but you sort of understand that feeling of, so every time I say an Amidah during the week, I'm thinking about, how can I engage in other aspects of mitzvot and other acts of chesed. And that's something that I wanted to focus in on. We're going to pick up on page 3. And page 3 is right in the middle of the Amidah. Last time we pointed out that there are kind of suggestions for how to personalize the prayer. Every time you say the Amidah, there has to be something new. This comes up more pronounced. We'll see a little bit later in this morning's session when we have Mincha Marav back to back, and there's like an Amidah, and then there's another Amidah, and you're like, I just said this. And so you need to try to do something new in every Amidah. And sometimes that could be about personalizing the prayer. And you can see an example of that, and we mentioned it last time, the prayer for those who are ill. So on page 38, you have a friend, a loved one, yourself. Anyone who is in need of healing, you can pause here, add their Hebrew name. If they're Jewish, if they're not Jewish, add their English name. Or if they're Jewish and you don't know their Hebrew name, add their English name. Let's say you don't even know their name. Think of them. It's okay. Bring them into your attention and think about them. And this tefillah gives us a very concrete way of doing that. There are a lot of other places in the Amidah for sort of personalization. One of the classic places is on page 40. Page 40, closing out this whole middle section of 13 brachot, of 13 blessings, brings us to the Shema Kolenu. And Shema Kolenu means, what does Shema mean?
Here.
Here, listen. Kolenu, from the word kol,
Our voice.
our voices. Hear our voices. And Shema Kolenu is sort of a place at the end of this section of the Amidah where we sort of bring everything we haven't yet covered. Right? I'm thinking about something else in my life that I didn't talk about. I didn't talk about we mentioned healing, we mentioned economic prosperity, we mentioned forgiveness, we mentioned wisdom. But actually today I really need courage. I need to do something I've never done before. And you didn't cover it in any of the other brachot. So in Shema Kolenu, you think about those other things that you need. You'll often hear when we do a repetition of the Amidah, the Shaliach Tzibor, the prayer leader, or the Shlichat Tzibor, which is the feminine, will say that paragraph a little bit louder. Shema Kolenu. You'll hear that sometimes on the holidays, right? That gets woven into the Amidot on Yom Kippur also, right? Really hear our prayer, hear our plea. And you're going to a deeper emotional place at this point in the Amidah, ideally. And that's a place where you weave in sometimes your own prayer. You see here they have on page 40 in the smaller font a version of a tefillah for Yom HaShoah, for Holocaust Remembrance Day. Obviously a newer custom in our tradition, but here's an idea of bringing in this memory into that place. So Shema Kolenu becomes the place where you can add all kinds of tefillot, your own compositions, your own thoughts, really just to pause in your Amidah to sort of say, what are the things that I need today? Where am I today? And so that's a really important part of the tefillah. I skipped back, turning back to page 39 for a moment, as we jump around a little bit in the Amidah. In the prayer for economic prosperity, in the iteration we have in our Siddur, right, it is, bless you, it is focused on our being farmers. This was written 2,000 years ago when we were farmers. And so it's very focused on, will there be enough rain to survive? Right? No rain, no crops, no food. Right? And so they were very connected to that. Right? We have stories and stories in the Talmud about droughts, about the community just in dire situations. We have the whole character of Choni Ma'agel, who would draw an igul, would draw a circle around himself, and he says, I'm not leaving this circle until it rains. And sometimes he just stayed there a long time. That was the number one reason that in ancient Israel they would call for a communal fast, right? The community was in desperate need of water. And all of us who've been to Israel or know of its climate know that it is very fragile. Nowadays, thanks to desalination, thanks to the way that they recycle water, Israel's actually in a much stronger place and actually exports its water technology to other parts of the world and is teaching the rest of the world about how to use water. In those days, obviously, it didn't have that. And they were desperate for rain. And if it didn't rain, everything could fall apart. Nowadays, I try to think about where are the economic places that we sort of need in our lives. Is it maybe your own job? Is it the economy, the stock market? If you work in a non-for-profit like I do, is it our ability to fundraise? What are the things that we need that will make sure that we will be successful and the things that we care about can be sustained? And those become some of the things to think about on page 39 in this first bracha. You'll see that the liturgy switches from summertime between bracha because they couldn't imagine it raining in the summer because it doesn't rain in the summer in Israel. So it would be kind of a strange prayer to ask for something which clearly is not going to happen, which is a great teaching to remind us of, which is you can't pray for things that are impossible. Right? You can say, I wish it were possible, but at the end of the day, prayer isn't going to work something that is beyond the realm of possibilities. Sometimes I'm with a family and someone is dying of a terminal illness, and there is nothing that we can do. All of the medicine, all of the human knowledge that we've gotten to, and obviously we've gotten to a pretty far along in this process, right, isn't going to save someone. And so the prayer sometimes gets changed a little bit, the way I'm praying for them. Sometimes the Mishaberach is more about strength and courage and kind of the healing of the soul rather than the healing of the body. And to make those adjustments, right? You can't pray for something that is impossible. There's a famous story about you come into a town and this is in the Talmud, and you hear like a siren of an emergency, there's a fire. You can't say at that point, I pray that the fire is not in my house. Why? Because the fire either is in your house or not in your house. You can pray that people are being rescued and that everyone's okay and that it's not so bad. But you can't pray for something that is impossible. That is called a tefillat shav. It is an inappropriate prayer. You can't pray for something that's in the past. Some of us are very excited sports fans, and we sometimes watch a game on videotape, and it already happened. You can't start praying that they're going to get a touchdown on the next play when the game already happened 6 hours ago. So here,
can you pray for trivial things? I mean, let's talk about people praying for their team to win.
So that's a whole separate issue. I'm just dealing with one, like why they changed this prayer from rain in the winter to blessing in the summer and not rain. And that's because it's not going to rain in Israel in the summer. It does not rain for 6 months. They're not going to pray for that. Right? And that's why I want to use. In terms of prayer for something trivial, if that's what you need, then that's what you need. I don't, believe that God is going to alter the course of any sporting event or anything else. Although when I'm watching the game, I have been known to get a little bit caught up and participate in how should we call it, strange practices and superstitious things as part of the kind of, fun of the game. When I step back afterwards, I am able to say that did not have any impact on the game. Even though in the moment...
But it was fun for the rest of us to watch.
It was fun for the rest of you to watch. People like to watch fun things. Okay.
Dilly.
In terms of praying for trivial things, I do want to say that, I say this to kids, what are you thinking about today? And our students say, as they sometimes say in my class on Sunday mornings, I'm praying, that I do well in my test tomorrow. I say, of course, that's what you should pray for. It's not a trivial thing. And I do believe that God is sending out spiritual energy. And if we are able to become aware of that energy, we can tap into that. That can help us be more calm and more successful and feel more at ease, which can actually result in a higher test score, which the studies can show that. So there's a clear, connection and a continuum there. People are like, I pray that I get a new Xbox, please. I try to lead people if that's maybe not the highest value that we need to be focused on in the Amidah. Some other questions, Allison?
So everything else in our religion is based on the lunar calendar. So how is it that it's always December 5th?
That is a great question. It is a 1-hour lecture in itself. We have not yet made a videotape. Kathy and Beth reminded me that a lot of what I'm covering today has been in the last 2 lectures, so I got to just say, wait, that's in the videotape. This we haven't yet made a videotape of. I'll just say one quick thing, right? Mashiva Ruach and Morid Hatal, right, at the beginning of the Amidah, on page 36b, right, you see in the middle, from Shmini Atzeret until Pesach, in the winter season, you cause the wind to blow and the rain to fall, right? You start saying that at the end of Sukkot, right, and then it goes from there. And they didn't want it to rain during Sukkot, of course, because they wanted you to be in the Sukkah. So you're not going to start praying for rain while you're in the Sukkah. But as soon as the rainy season starts, which is usually around the end of Sukkot anyway, that's when you would make that shift. This part of the prayer wanted to allow time for the pilgrims, right, who had made a journey maybe from a faraway place, maybe from Babylonia all the way to the temple in Jerusalem, and wanted them to have enough time to get home without dealing with rain or some mud or any kind of problems on the way. So they waited and delayed it a certain amount of time. In the end, it evolved that it was on the solar calendar as the date. There's a whole discussion of why it changes. It's a longer lecture that I can't do today, but it is in essence a framework for the people who are not in Israel. And so they used the solar basis, which was their system outside of Israel that they were used to, and it was also something that they could find more easily and know when that was going to be. But it is a longer talk. There's a fascinating article. Rabbi Fell and I usually teach it on a Wednesday morning around December 4th at the Wednesday morning breakfast is usually where we cover it each year. If anyone, I can get you the link. It's about a 4 or 5 page scholarly article on that. Other questions on the Amidah? Okay, the end of the Amidah is where I wanted to really take us to, page 44. You see here a couple of different options for concluding prayers. And these are from different places in the tradition. And you can write your own prayer. I remember when I was younger and I wrote my own end of the Amidah prayer. And for years and years, that's how I ended my Amidah. And it was a little bit based on Rav Kook's Shir Merubah, the great first chief rabbi of before even Israel was Israel, at the time of Palestine in the early 20th century. He wrote a fourfold song, and it's kind of a poem connecting ourselves, being rooted in ourselves, the circles around us, our family, our friends and community, and all humanity, and sort of making sure that at the end of the Amidah, we are connected to all of those circles. And that was my tefillah that I wrote for the end of the Amidah. And you can write your own. It could be something that you would say every time, something short that you might want to use. It could be something that creative and totally spontaneous that you write for that, or compose in your mind, or think about for that moment. But the end of the Amidah is a moment where you're really connected, hopefully, to what's going on in your own heart, in your own neshama. The end of the Amidah concludes the same way that it began. So you have your feet together during the Amidah, and we talked about the places where we bow, and then you take 3 steps back. Oseh shalom b'mamav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Some people go up on their toes. This originated probably because there was going to be a repetition of the Amidah, and that the repetition had already started, and that you were still saying your silent Amidah, and you finally finished your Amidah right as you were coming into the Kedusha, which is how we get the going up on our toes, Kadosh, 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 that you sort of walked right into that line. Now it's become the practice of ending the Amidah in that same way, and bowing to the sides like the angels in this elaborate metaphor of what takes place in the heavens, turning to each other as we turn to each other and build community through the end of the Amidah, and that becomes the closing ritual.
I think this concluding prayer, that Elohai, to me, resonates with me almost more than any other prayer. I mean, other prayers come and go. This one is just always, it's just really...
I think Joel has pointed us to something very important. Page 44 has beautiful tefillot. We don't have as much time to go through it word by word, right? But it is an unbelievably powerful notion. Keep my tongue from evil, my lips from lies. Right? Help me watch how I say, how I speak, and how I communicate. Help me ignore those who are hurting me or slander me. Let me be humble. Open my heart to your Torah. Right? This is a very powerful prayer that dates back to the Talmud. There's a reason that it became the standard. Instead of like, here's an idea of something to say, it really became part of the liturgy because it is so beautiful. They offer you another alternative below it. And when I added my own composition at the end, I still always said this because it is, as Joel just said, so profoundly moving and powerful. And we'll try to take a look at that a little bit more deeply another time.
Rabbi, before you move on,
Yeah.
can you just review all the places where the bowing occurs?
Sure. One last reviewing of the bowing and the choreography. So let's start on page 36b. Wherever you are in shul, if you're on the sides, you turn and face the same direction. Right? One of the key things is that we're all facing the same way. So if you're on the sides of our shul or in this space, you want to turn and face the same direction. Here we're actually facing east, which is good. It's how we should be. In our other sanctuary, we're a little bit off, but you face in the same direction. In this case, because there's a Torah scroll, we all face in that same direction. So you want to be facing all in the same direction, ideally towards east, and you have your feet together. Right? The first movement is on the top of 36b. Adonai, right leg. Sfatai, left leg. Tiftach, right leg. Then forward. Ufi, right. Yagid, left. Tilatecha. 3 steps back, 3 steps forward, each time beginning with the right leg. Then that first paragraph, Baruch, bowing at the knees. Atah, bowing at the waist. God's name, Adonai, standing up straight. And that's like a conversation. Right? First I bring in a sense of humility, and that's the bowing of the knees. And now I'm ready to talk to God, and I'm standing up straight and tall, just like the way anyone would converse. At the end of that paragraph, okay, take a look. Right after it says between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Melech Ozer Fokeinu Mashiach Magen, Baruch, bowing at the knees. Atah, at the waist. God's name. And that's the second place. So both the beginning and the end of that blessing, the first place we bow. Page 37. At the bold line, the third line. Kadosh, 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 holy, holy, holy. It's yesterday's Haftarah. Beautiful Haftarah, right? Of trying to get into a peak moment. And sometimes, as we talked about, imagine a peak moment in your life, a place in nature, an experience with yourself or with someone else or in community, a profoundly moving experience. That's what you want to be thinking about or feeling as you go up on your toes. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. God's presence fills the entire universe. The next bold line, Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkomo. Again, you go up in Baruch on your toes. And the last line in bold, Loch, again on your toes, and you're standing up straight when you get to God's name. So those are the places on page 37. On page 38, we have the prayer for forgiveness, Slach Lanu. Just like we do on Yom Kippur, some people gently strike their chests in an act of asking for forgiveness. Some people, we talked about this year on the holidays, right? Removing the things they want to remove from themselves and can do this action. Whatever is meaningful for you, it's not like a requirement, but if this feels meaningful, those are the traditions in Slach Lanu. Slach Lanu Avinu Ki Chatanu, Mechal Lanu Makinu Ki Fashanu. Those two words, Slach and Mechal, right, meaning forgive and pardon, are the same two words that we use on the high holidays with the same motions. So it gives us a sense of that. All the way, no real choreography in the next part of the Amidah. I talked about saying Shema Koleinu a little bit louder. One thing that's really important, I don't know if we focused on 2 weeks ago, is the Amidah in the silent part has to be silent. If I can hear you, then it's actually not silent. That's the weird silence thing works. Hannah, if you remember Hannah from the story of Samuel 3,000 years ago, modeled this form of prayer. She was the first one to move her lips, but not have any sound come out. And so sometimes we get a little, exuberant in our silent Amidah, and sound comes out. But if the person standing right next to you can hear you, then it's too loud. It really has to be silent. And you should really be able to feel the silence when we're in a silent Amidah. Shema Koleinu we talked about in a repetition of the Amidah when we're saying it out loud, adding a little extra kavanah, a little extra intensity to that part. All the way to 41. The next place we bow is Modim, and it's a different type of bow. It's not a knee, then waist bowing. It just starts at the waist. Modim anachnu lach, right? We are thankful, right, to you. Shatahu, that you are Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai our God, and the God of our ancestors forever. And you come back up, Modim at the waist, Anachnu lach. So by the time you get to God's name again on the second line, you're standing up straight and tall. This blessing ends all the way, has a lot of insertions. This prayer of thanksgiving is where we add in days like Hanukkah, Purim, Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Independence Day. So it has a lot of options. And then all the way on 43, this blessing ends in the second paragraph. Okay, line 1, 2, 3, 4 in the middle. Baruch, bowing at the knees. Atah at the waist, standing up straight and tall for God's name. Hatov shimcha ulechana lehodot. How you are the essence. Your name is the essence of goodness, worthy of acclaim, worthy of praise. And so that's the Thanksgiving prayer, and that's the second blessing. So we have the first blessing, and then the penultimate blessing where we bow. And then we talked about the movements at the very end of the Amidah for Oseh Shalom.
Yeah, the last thing is during the silent, during the repetition.
During the repetition. So there's one other motion. Thank you, Kathy. During the repetition, on the bottom of page 41, you'll see a paragraph in a smaller font. So a lot of times people were composing prayers, like the one that Joel just liked, and more than one person composed a prayer. And now we had two versions. Like here you have two versions of Modim. And so what the tradition did, which is a kind of a nice thing to say, we love all these things, is we'll take yours and use it in one place, and we'll use this other person's in another place. So Modim, the one that's in a larger font, is the version that you say in the normal Amidah, when you recite it silently or out loud. But during the repetition, the congregation has a different version to say. And I like this as a teaching about how we learn from diversity, how about there's blessings in our difference, and how we value other opinions, so it's a kind of a reminder. It's pretty much the same theme, a little bit of a different poetry. And the motion there is to bow forward a little bit in your seats. So if you're sitting, you're kind of bowing forward. If you're standing, you would bow your head. You see that sometimes in Birkat HaMazon, in the Grace After Meals. There are places where people kind of lean forward and give a gentle bow, and then they recite these words in the smaller font, while the prayer leader is still reciting the words in the larger font out loud. Marty.
If certain joints associated with bowing are not working so good,
so nothing that we do should bring any harm to your body. So if this is not working for you, please do not engage in it. We're hoping to start some more yoga classes here. So I do offer those as a potential derech, a potential route to take, and that might be a helpful way. But all of these, you should be gentle. If your body is not going to do well with some motion, then please do not engage in it. Alan.
Why in the Shabbat Amidah do we sometimes not bow at Baruch Atah Gazni?
Great question. And maybe this is what Kathy also wanted me to cover, if I understand it. In the repetition of the Amidah, only the leader does the bowing in that first blessing, right? Because we're now not saying it for ourselves. It's a little confusing because the way we often say it is called the Hecha Kedusha, where we're saying it through the Kedusha out loud together. And then we do the bowing because we're not going to go back and say those paragraphs at all. But when there's a repetition, and you've said the whole Amidah to yourself silently with all the motions and all the bowing, then only the prayer leader does the bowing in the repetition. And we say Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo and Amen to those blessings. Maybe we sing in a little bit and join in, but we don't do the bowing. So if there's a repetition, then only the leader is doing that bowing. In the Kedusha, which is a back and forth doxology, a back and forth praise, then we do engage in going up on our toes in the motions because we are participating in it.
And Zel, Zeh also on the repetition?
Exactly. Zel, Zeh, right. So that's, whenever there's a Kedusha, that means there's either a Kedusha that we're doing the whole thing out loud. So anytime you hear Zel, Zeh, you're in it. That means you're in it along with everyone else. Zeh, Zeh means turning one to another. And so we act that out and demonstrate that. A lot of the motions are actually about bringing, our bodies into the experience and acting out a drama. I was hoping to get to taking an aliyah today. But when you take an aliyah, you are actually taking hold of Torah and acting out what we are feeling and what we're talking about and the values. And the same thing in the Kedusha, right? The Kara Zel Zeh is about turning one to another. And if there's no one standing next to you, then look around the room, or at least think about other people and think about your connection to other people. But that's the time that we don't bow, is if it's a repetition of the Amidah, only the leader bows. Questions on that? Yeah.
Not on that, but
Oh, something else.
one other technical question. Occasionally when there's a changing of the season and say you forget to do Morid HaGashim, and you start from the beginning of the prayer, or are there any, how do you work it back in? Or?
That is a very complicated question because the halakha is pretty strict about this. If you're still in that same blessing, the easiest thing is just go back and say it from Mashiva Ruach and Morid HaGashim. Some people say if you're in the next blessing, you need to go back and start the Amidah all over again. If you're in your silent Amidah, it's more comfortable doing it. If you're in the repetition or the out loud Amidah, it's a little bit more awkward. So hopefully someone caught it and you're able to add it. And you try to balance out not wanting to embarrass everyone, but you want to get into the right season and try to make those two things come together as best as you can.
Back to the Amidah, Mechaye HaMetim. We don't bow.
We don't bow there.
To that one.
Yeah, there's a misconception about, bowing at that place, but there is no bowing at the end of the second blessing. Praising God for bringing life to the dead, for the world to come. Obviously an important theme, but it's not one of the places that we bow. Only in that first paragraph, beginning and end, and the penultimate paragraph, Modim. Yeah.
Going back to Modim, there's no bowing at the end, communally?
There isn't a tradition that I'm aware of. Don't forget, different communities have all different traditions. That might be a tradition that I'm just unaware of, not one that I've heard of. The end of that blessing doesn't occur all the way until 43, and then there is a full bow when you're saying it to yourself, not when there's a repetition and you're in the community. The community just does that leading forward. Okay, So we're a little bit behind. At this point, I'm supposed to be done with page 3. So we're just a little bit behind. Sometimes people like to sing Oseh Shalom at the end of the Amidah in certain places. That can be nice. I usually use that in a Shiva home. Even though things are subdued in a house of mourning, that becomes a real place to connect people. Some people really appreciate that. Sometimes there's a little extra time and you want to bring people together, and Oseh Shalom is a beautiful way to have a moment of song that brings everyone together. After the Amidah comes Tachanun. And I really, like, Tachanun is a whole topic unto itself. We do have some videos on Tachanun, and I should just go, click here, and then the videos will magically appear. We do have a video on Tachanun. Tachanun is really one of our most ancient and visceral prayers. It's to take all the intensity of the Amidah and then go a little bit deeper, and go to that really deep place of feeling. It begins on page 59 on Mondays and Thursdays. Why Mondays and Thursdays would they add even more prayers? Right, Mondays and Thursdays, what else do we do? We read Torah. Why do we read Torah on Mondays and Thursdays? Those were the market days. So people were already gathered, they assembled, they had a little bit more time to read Torah, and they also had a little bit more time for an extended Tachanun. If you go through these poems, these prayer poems on page 59, 60, 61, from different periods of Jewish history, you will see the depths of sort of the suffering, the intensity that people felt. And Tachanun is about going a little bit deeper to a more emotional place. If you're in a traditional community, sometimes you'll see people start to cry at Tachanun if they haven't gone to that emotional place during the Amidah itself. There's also motions involved in Tachanun. Tachanun is about bringing our body into the experience. It's a great Talmudic story about one of the rabbis who did a very intense Tachanun, which was full plank, but he did it on his big toes, meaning his 2 big toes and his thumbs. And he unfortunately had a Tachanun accident and tore all the ligaments in his hands and toes. And they try to tell you, that's too intense, please don't do that. But the idea is prostrating yourself, which they used to do on the ground. You can go to our prostration video and watch different forms of prostration, which we still use on the high holidays. But their idea was to literally get down onto the ground or lower and rest your head on your forearm. If you're wearing tefillin on your left arm, then you would use your right arm. Really, just this position is one of supplication, one of humility, one of giving yourself over. And that is what you're supposed to try to feel, right? That we are not in control of everything in this world as much as we'd like to be. And this position, even just the act of leaning forward like this, is one of submission, is one of being aware that we are not in control of everything in life. So part of Tachanun is really about the position and the change in the way you're sitting as much as the words themselves. Those introductory paragraphs are usually said while standing on Mondays and Thursdays, on 59 through 61, although some people sit. And 62 is this supplicatory position, and it appears also in Mincha, which we'll see in a few minutes in the afternoon service. And there's suggested texts, right, for King David turning to the prophet Gad and saying, I'm in deep trouble. Let us fall into the hands of God. I have no way to save us. And we all sometimes face those moments in our lives when we are in deep distress. And so this is about a position that affirms that and hopefully helps us when we are feeling that sense of pain, of difficulty, of surrender, and needing just to be held like that. And the position, right, if you use a chair, sometimes I take my tallis and put it over my head, right, feels one of just being held in a vulnerable state. And we can all think about moments in our own lives when we have needed that. There are 2 suggested texts, Psalm 6 on page 62 or Psalm 130. And sometimes you don't need a text. You just can close your eyes and use the feeling in your own heart. But if you want a text, Psalm 6 is a very intense psalm. We'll try to find another time in a future session or year to study a beautiful text. 63, we come out of the supplicatory position and we're sitting up. Shomer Yisrael, one of the things that kind of gives us strength is that there is still a remnant of the Jewish people. We may be struggling, we may be feeling this need for Tachanun because of our own personal challenges or because of our communal challenges that we've experienced as a people. But we come back, Shomer Yisrael, right? There is a guardian of Israel, and we call upon that guardian for help and strength. And this very powerful Shomer Yisrael paragraph, which we sometimes sing, is about holding on to that remnant and to that spark and using that then to bring more goodness into the world. 63 continues with the next 2 paragraphs, and then traditionally you stand up for the last paragraph on 63, and we don't even know what we will do. Because sometimes there's moments in your life where you don't know what you're going to do, and you're not sure what's the best course of action. And similarly, as you change positions, standing, bowed over in supplication, seated, and now standing, right, the positions of Tachanun say in every way, right, we're kind of pouring ourselves out to you, God, and we don't even know how to sit or stand. And so we go through all the different positions by the end of that prayer, and then the prayer leader picks up the box, Ozreinu, that's a kamatz katan, it has an O sound, Ozreinu alei shenu. In our new Siddur, they actually point out all the kamatz. Every time there's a kamatz katan, it is pointed out so you can see that it's not an ah sound, which is a regular kamatz, one of those mini T's. But if it's a separated one, it's very hard to see, and my eyes are starting to go. But if you look very carefully under that ayin in the middle of the second to last line on 63, you see that the kamatz is separated a little bit. It's a T with a little bit of a gap, and that little gap is to tell you that's an O sound, Ozreinu instead of Azreinu, a little Hebrew grammar. The service continues with the Chatzi Kaddish on 64. You've already been standing from the end of Tachanun, so you go right into the Chatzi Kaddish. There are exceptions to Tachanun, right? Tachanun is not recited on a joyful day or on a sad day. On a joyful day, because it's going to take you out of your joy, and then you won't get to experience the holiday or whatever the happy occasion is. On a sad day, you don't say it because it's too intense, and it will kind of take you into too dark a place, too sad a state of mind. So you don't say it. If you're in Shiva and you're at home, you don't say Tachanun. If you just got married and it's the week after your wedding, you come to shul, not only do you not say Tachanun, but your presence changes everyone. Everyone says, oh, bride and groom, you guys just got married. Either one. A bride or a groom, anyone who just got married in the week after their wedding, then you won't say Tachanun in shul. If someone becomes a bar or bat mitzvah on that particular day, and they're coming for their first minyan, and we give them a chocolate lollipop, and that is their Hebrew birthday, and that's the day they become a bar mitzvah, then we wouldn't say Tachanun either, because their presence changes the experience in the shul. So there are a number of places where Tachanun, in essence, gets eliminated because of what's going on in the calendar, or what's going on in people's lives, which is a really neat teaching. Chatzi Kaddish flows right in. We're already standing. Our community's tradition is to stand for the Chatzi Kaddish, and that brings us right to the Torah service. Page 65. We mentioned why Mondays and Thursdays, the market days, we bring the Torah around and process it because it is like it is our most sacred text. It represents our deepest values, and when it processes through the synagogue, it is as if a king has entered our space. It is the presence of something incredibly sacred and holy. It's not merely the words on the scroll. For me, as I spoke about yesterday on Shabbat, it's about how they've been interpreted and how we, in generations and hundreds of generations, have made them holy and made them what they are. When we put away the Torah, we say, Eitz Chaim Hi, it is a living tree. Torah is not merely black ink on white parchment, or as the rabbis call it, black fire on white fire. It is not merely what's on the scroll, but it is, of course, how it's been alive for thousands of years and interpreted and reinterpreted, and it is a dynamic force that is alive. Sometimes people get confused which Torah we're referring to. Is it the Torah in the Ark, the actual scroll, or is it Torah writ large? Right? The experience of Torah in our lives, something that is organic and evolving and ongoing, is sometimes what that Torah scroll represents. And as it comes around, there's a tradition to take a siddur, take your tzitzit, touch it to the Torah, touch it to your lips. Right? And the words of the Torah become the words that I speak. And so as it comes around the synagogue, you follow it. Right? And that's why we close the ark, so we're not turning our back on those Torah scrolls, and we follow the Torah as it goes around the shul, and we turn and follow it around, so that we don't turn our back on those ideals and those values. You don't have to touch it. Must everyone touch it? You do not. But if you like that custom, you're invited. Can non-Jews touch it? That might be a disagreement in different communities. In our community, we welcome the people who are not Jewish to touch it, to take a siddur if they don't have tzitzit, right, to touch it and bring it to their lips if that would be meaningful to them. One of the things that our Keruv committee, our committee that has been tasked with finding ways to welcome non-Jews into the community, has been thinking about is where are the places that we want someone who isn't Jewish to participate, and this is certainly one of them. Someone who is part of our community or is coming or is visiting, we want them to feel welcome, and so we're looking for as many places as possible for them to participate, and this would certainly be one of them. Questions about that? All right, let's jump into aliyot. What's the minimum number of aliyot you can have at a Torah service? 3. You have to have 3 aliyot, and you have to read a minimum of how many verses? 3 in each aliyah, and for the whole reading you have to have at least 10. So minimum is 3, 3, and 4. If I show up here and no one's prepared the Torah reading, and suddenly I'm about to read Torah, then I usually go for a 3, 3, and 4, because that will be already exciting enough. We don't need to add to the excitement. On the minimum Torah reading, right, has 3 days, and you can sort of get a guide to what's going on in the day and the holiness of the day by how many aliyot there are. Monday or Thursday morning, 3 aliyot, that's the minimum. It's a special day, not that special, a little bit special. Shabbat afternoon, we already had a Torah reading with 7 aliyot in the morning. Shabbat afternoon has 3 aliyot. Right, a fast day when there's Torah reading, 3 aliyot. It's not that special, it's actually kind of intense and a little sad. We'll have 3 aliyot, that's the minimum. When do we have 4 aliyot? Rosh Chodesh. So now it's a holiday, it's a biblical holiday, the beginning of the new month. So now we have 4. A little bit more holy, a little bit more special, but you can still work on Rosh Chodesh. Not that special. 5. Oh, I skipped one for 4. Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days of a festival when you also can work, you also have 4 aliyot. 5 is the festivals. The pilgrimage festivals get 5 aliyot, a little bit more holy. 6, Yom Kippur. More intense. 6, go to Yom Kippur. And the most special, Shabbat. Now, of course, everyone says, wait a second, isn't Yom Kippur more intense? Isn't that called Shabbat Shabbaton? Isn't that the more special day? Right, when Yom Kippur falls on Shabbat, don't we fast? And that's a tension in the tradition between those two. Right, and there's a great rabbinic teaching, Tadir v'she'enot Tadir. What is common versus what is not common, Tadir Kodem. What is common versus what is not common, the common thing takes precedence. Right, we're always taught if it's a special occasion, that's when we got to pull out all the stops. But in Judaism, it's actually what's common. Every week, the rhythm of Shabbat, that's the most sacred. The people that you come into contact the most, right, those are the most sacred people. Not the special day when you get to meet some important person. Right, those are the people we need to pay the most attention to, and those are the hardest. And that takes the most work. Right, so Tadir v'she'enot Tadir, Shabbat, in this case, takes precedence. 7 aliyot versus Yom Kippur. The only exception is when Yom Kippur falls on Shabbat, then there are 7 aliyot as well. All right, moving through this, the memorial prayer on weekday morning services and Shabbat Mincha. If you're remembering someone, a yortzeit, anniversary of their death, whether they are Jewish or not Jewish, and you'd like an aliyah, you can come up and have an aliyah to the Torah or have some other honor, and then we will recite a prayer, a memorial prayer, the El Malei Rachamim, in their memory. If it's a day when we don't say Tachanun, we have a different form of that prayer, but we still recite that prayer. And if they're not Jewish, we have a slight change in the liturgy to acknowledge that they aren't Jewish, and we would still say the prayer inserting their English name. And that's our understanding that our mourning rituals are not about saying something about the deceased, but something about us, and they're for us. And our mourning rituals are really to help us through times of difficulty. I've had people say, oh, my father didn't believe in God, did not like Judaism, I don't want to offend him by coming to say Kaddish for him. I said, well, I don't think, he's going to be offended right now, because he's not really going to be voicing an opinion. This is really about you, where you are right now. And if it's helpful for you to say Kaddish for someone, then you say it. These are rituals, right, even though we associate them with lifting up someone's memory, for me, they're much more profound about helping you through a time when you need that additional help. So I have no problem with people coming over to say those memorial prayers, remembering someone who's Jewish or not Jewish. During the Torah service, is kind of a time of intensity, which is why that's where we remember someone at the Torah service is particularly powerful and intense. And that's the same reason that that's where we recall and bring people's names of people who were ill into the Torah service. The Torah is out. This is a time of real communal intensity. That's where we add all of those important prayers. Even just after we put away the Torah scroll on Shabbat morning, that's where we pray for our congregation and our community, for our country, for Israel, right, for peace, right, things that are really, really important. When the Torah is out, everyone is focused. That's when we pray for healing for those in need and have some of those rituals. A word about our prayer for healing. During the week, we just simply pause and people say the names of their loved ones in Hebrew or in English. And on Shabbat, people actually come up to the Torah. We invite them to rest their hands on the Torah scroll instead of holding the Torah. Holding the Torah is the act that you do for an aliyah, taking hold of the Torah, and I'll talk about in a moment how you take an aliyah. Whereas resting your hands on top of the Torah is more about connecting to being, present in this need of support. And so we try to have a slightly different ritual for each of those. If you're not Jewish and you'd like to come up to the Torah, you're welcome to come up to the Torah, say the name of your friend or loved one in Hebrew or in English. Why are the names switched is the next question. Right, when you're called to the Torah, traditionally only men were called to the Torah. And they were called up by their names, the son of their father's names. A lot of gender stereotyping here. It was assumed that your father taught you Torah. So I would be David Gavriel ben Shimon Shlomo, or Harav David Gavriel ben Harav Shimon Shlomo would be the way I would have been called to the Torah in previous times. But the truth is my mom taught me a lot of Torah. I don't want to get competitive, but maybe even more than my dad. And she is a great teacher of Torah, and the truth is we learn from both of our parents. So most people get called to the Torah with both names of their parents. And if your parents aren't Jewish, we also have ways of working in their names in our community to acknowledge their roles in our lives as well. And so we are able to work their names even though they don't have a Hebrew or Jewish name. So we use both names. We usually start with the father's name and then the mother's. Nowadays you could have two mothers or two fathers or one mother or all different scenarios, and so we adjust accordingly. When you're reciting someone's name for healing, right, here is a little bit of gender stereotyping as well. They would say your name with your mother's name, because presumably your mother was doing all of the healing, was providing the chicken soup, and was doing all of that nurturing. So nowadays, we sometimes do both names, but we start with the mother's name. So we sort of kept those traditions, but flip them around a little bit. Sometimes in the interest of speed, we write them on a Mishaberach list with the father's names as well. But since we're sometimes reciting a lot of names, we sometimes just use the mother's names for healing. I want to say a word about taking an aliyah. When you're given an aliyah, you want to be zrizim lamitzvot. You want to be excited to perform a mitzvah. So you want to get up as close to the Torah as fast as you can and come running up and come, sit up in the front row, somewhere close. I'm off camera. But you want to get as close as you can to the action and be waiting because you're excited to perform the mitzvah. Then you get called up to the Torah, you come stand up on this side, the Torah reader is over here, and you take your tzitzit, you touch it to the place where the Torah is going to be read, and touch it to your lips. This is a teaching from my teacher, Rabbi Libo, who said, right, you want the words of the Torah to become the words that you speak. So it's not about kissing those words, it's about internalizing them. Then you take hold of the Torah with both hands, so you're holding both of the Atzei Chaim, both of the wooden handles, and you say the blessings. Baruch Adonai Havarach. And don't forget to repeat that line. Baruch Adonai Havarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Some people have the custom of lifting up the Torah at that word. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah. You say that as you're opening the Torah, so now the reader can jump right in. If you're the reader, you're immediately saying Amen, even before you find your place, ideally, because you don't want to look like the word Amen is in the text. And then you're starting to read, and then at the end, when you finish, again, and if you're having the aliyah, you should be looking into the text. If you can, mouth the words that are being read by the reader, not out loud and start distracting the reader. Our Torah readers are not going to like that. But you can mouth the words you should be reading. Don't forget, originally when you were called for an aliyah, you did both actions. You said the blessings, and you read. And anyone who got called was like, whoop, wow, okay, I'm on. It was pretty exciting. Because suddenly you were called to read Torah. Don't forget, they didn't have a lot of other books and texts. and pretty much most knowledgeable Jews could pretty much, or certainly many, could come up and pretty much sight read Torah in ancient times, any part of the Torah. I did have a member of my dad's congregation in New Jersey who could do this, and it was an unbelievable thing. Jonathan Schwartz could literally be called up any part of the Torah, read it, perfect Hebrew, perfect trope, knew the entire Torah by heart. He still read it from the scroll, but he had it perfectly read. At the end of the reading, right, you touch the place where it finishes, again touching it to your lips, may the words of the Torah be the words I speak. Close the Torah, hold the handles, and recite the closing blessing. And that dramatizes what we want in terms of a value is that you are taking hold of the Torah, that you are taking ownership of it. And just like the Israelites at Sinai that we read yesterday, right, they say, Na'aseh v'nishma, we are 100% doing this, right, they're taking it on and internalizing it. And it's a re-covenanting moment, right, you are taking on this covenant again. Just like when we put on the tefillin and we wrap it around our fingers and we're marrying God, taking an aliyah is another one of those rituals where you really feel, right, that you are now part of this tradition and wed to it in the most deep ways. I'm going to quickly run through the rest of the Torah service. There's a Chatzi Kaddish there for additional praise and to separate between Maftir and the 7 Aliyot on Shabbat, and just to indicate the end of the Torah service on a regular weekday morning. Then there's the lifting and dressing of the Torah. There is the tradition to lift up your pinky finger, which is the way that they would take an oath in the ancient world. Nowadays, right, you put your hand on the Bible and you say, they'll ask you to swear if you're in court, and we don't, as Jews don't swear, we say I affirm, because we don't swear. We don't want to take God's name in vain accidentally. So we say I affirm, and the ancient way of doing that was by lifting up your pinky finger. And sometimes people put the tzitzit on their finger, wrap it around their finger to sort of indicate these are the core, right, teachings that have become the mitzvot, and touch it to your lips. V'zot Torah, this is the Torah, and to connect it to our lips again to what we're going to speak and to things that we hope to internalize. That is the lifting and dressing of the Torah, which are important honors. And that whole drama of lifting the Torah, again, it also feels a little bit like a Sinai moment. When we do it on Shavuot, is that this machine?
No.
Oh, okay. When we do it on Shavuot, right, we're doing it, we're reading Torah ideally out here, and the sun is rising in the back through the trees, and when you lift up the Torah, if it just works out perfectly, then you see the streams of sunlight coming through the scroll, and it's a particularly beautiful and powerful way of reading the Torah. In a weekday service on page 72, you have a couple of blessings for well-being, the Yiratzons, which talk about basic values, taking care of people who are in danger, making sure we sustain scholars and learning, one of the core and deepest values. Those are all embedded on page 72. And then returning the Torah, we go in the opposite direction. When we come out of the ark at the beginning of the Torah service, we go counterclockwise. We begin right and come back left. And when we return the Torah, we always go clockwise, begin left, and come back right.
Is that just our tradition, or why do we do that?
No, that is in the traditional sources, and that's because a lot of things are a right-hand dominated world. So if you're putting on your shoes, the Shulchan Aruch says put on your right shoe first. If you're walking out with the Torah, you go right first. I'm left-handed, but I'm okay with that. Okay, I had enough trouble cutting paper when I was in first grade. I eventually got over that more or less, but what can we do? Yeah.
And then why do you, when we bow, you go left, right, center? Why do you go left?
Because we like to equalize things. That's the ancient tradition of how they turned from one side to another. That's how we had it from the Beit HaMikdash. And to be honest with you, I don't know what the reason for that is, except that that is the tradition dating back to the temple thousands of years ago. Allison and
When the Haggadah lifts the Torah, how many columns are supposed to be shown?
So the key thing is not to drop the Torah. The most important thing about Haggadah is not to drop the Torah. So that's goal number one. Number two, you should show some of the Torah. Otherwise, if it's close, you haven't shown the Torah, and it would be strange to sort of say, this is the Torah. I don't know, I'm not sure. Maybe it's there. It could be. Ideally, traditionally you show 3 columns. I've seen some people like to show 7 columns and get a little excited. You know, that's your tradition and your custom, and you can do that safely, and you're tall enough that you have that kind of wingspan, as we say in Yiddish, gig isn't to hate, and you know, but you know, the idea is to show 3 columns, show a little bit of the Torah, you can see it. I mean, it's neat to see. We just read the Song of the Sea last week ago, and you can see the way that that's written differently in poetic form, looking at the 10 Commandments and seeing the breaks, you know, and seeing the left side of the left tablet and the kind of breaks in the text from yesterday's reading. It's neat to see it. And since we're all sitting and not everyone got a chance to be in the Torah service and see it, it's neat to get a chance to see it. Yeah.
I just had a quick question about the left-right
Right.
bowing, because I just realized maybe I'm doing it wrong. Did you mean that it, like at the end of the Amidah, when we do that,
Exactly.
that we should do left first?
Exactly.
Okay, whoops, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't like get so caught up on it. It's not like, you know, these are more custom on customs, but it is the 3 steps, and bowing left and then bowing right. And going back to Alan's question, Vikara Zeh El Zeh in the Kedusha, there is this notion of bowing left and right. And I don't have a good reason on it, but we'll go to on the Martin.
For the kissing the Torah, do you have to have something intermediate between the Torah, or can you touch it directly?
That's a great question. Some people like to have something intermediate, sort of make sure everyone can sort of participate. But at the end of the time, you'll see some people just take their hand and touch it to your lips. Some people will kiss. Some people just touch it to their lips. Again, this notion of may I internalize it. You can do it either way. I think it is the kind of preferred way to use Siddur or Tzitzit or something like that. Marty and then Beth.
I don't remember where I read or heard this, but the idea was when you do Hagba, put a seam visible.
Yeah.
So that if anything goes wrong, it's the seam that gives way, not the parchment.
Yes. So obviously the Torah, each section is sewn together, and what you do not want to do, God forbid, would be drop the Torah or rip it down the middle. But if it did, God forbid, tear, if it tore on a seam, then you could sew it back much more easily, and the damage would be mitigated. But ideally, hopefully, no one is getting to that place, so we're gonna be safe. All right, Beth.
Isn't the Torah cover the intermediary?
The Torah cover can be seen as the intermediary, but for some people, they want an intermediary on the intermediary, and that's where you would get some of those other customs. Gideon.
There's a descent, I think in Matzor, it's just the Mizot HaTorah is nothing, okay.
There's a dissent about, you mean because the text is inaccurate? Or what do you, I'm not sure.
The whole thing of Mizot HaTorah, they're saying that.
Yeah, so Gideon's pointing out that line, this is the Torah that God gave Moses. I don't believe that God gave Moses the Torah at Sinai. So I say that, but in my mind, I'm thinking of the core of this Torah was revealed, the core of the revelation, you know, was this experience at Sinai. So yes, I think you can reconstruct and transvaluate the meaning of that line and still say it, even if we don't actually believe that. Never in the Torah does it say that Moses sat on top of Mount Sinai and took dictation. That is a much later rabbinic teaching, which they wrote back into the text, but is not true in the text. The Torah never makes such a claim, nor would I support that claim. All right, so we're running out of time, but luckily we've covered most of the material. Bottom of page 3 in our sheets, where we return the Torah, and then we have our closing prayers on page 78. And we go back to the Ashrei again. The Ashrei, the rabbis say it 3 times a day, and you'll automatically get a spot reserved for you in the world to come. So you're like, that's not so hard. I'll definitely do that. You know, it's like a get out of jail free card. You're definitely going to hold on to that. Could come in handy, I don't know. So the Ashrei, they wanted recited 3 times. One in Shachrit in the middle of the service, one after the Torah service, or at the end of Shachrit, and once is the introduction to Mincha. Those are the 3 times a day that we have the Ashrei in the liturgy. And so here it's again. We have a couple of other prayers. Lamenatseach, Psalm 20, and Uvalat Zion on page 80, which also has kind of a mini Kedusha within it. And those all the way bring us to 82, where we conclude this whole section with a full Kaddish, and then we stand for the Aleinu. In every service, there's an Aleinu, which is kind of weird, because Aleinu, was written for Rosh Hashanah. It was a nice poem about creation, and the Jewish people got really carried away with it a little bit. And they threw it into every single service as the close. And so it is. It has some nice themes. My favorite is in the second paragraph, L'taken olam b'malchut Shaddai, to heal or repair the world in the kingdom of God, in the ideas of God. And so Aleinu hopefully carries us into this notion at the end of the prayer, radically says, God is not one until we make God one. Right? V'nei amar, as we always sing, sometimes we don't think about what we're singing. But we're singing, on that day, one day God will be king of all the universe. But God's not. It's a broken universe. And until we partner with God in perfecting the universe, it's not. But on that day, Bayomahu, on that day, God will be one and God's name will be one. And this is this Kabbalistic notion that God's name, the Yud-He and the Vav-He, are split, and that they become unified, and they become whole when we engage in mitzvot, and when we perform tikkun olam. So it has a lot of nice themes to close out the service, and we have a custom here at Temple Amun of singing it, and then we go right into the Mourner's Kaddish. There are lots of different practices regarding the standing and the recitation of Kaddish. If you go to the Mourner's Kaddish, if you go to a Reform synagogue, everyone stands and everyone says every Mourner's Kaddish. If you go to an Orthodox synagogue, everyone stands, but only the mourners recite it. In most conservative synagogues, like ours, the mourners stand and recite the Kaddish, and everyone else responds and holds them through their responses. I'm not trying to belittle one custom or another. They're all different. They've evolved in different ways. That's a separate lecture about how that all happened. But it is nice to follow the communal custom of the community you're in. That's in the Talmud. So if you're in a Reform synagogue, you can feel fine joining in or standing up. If you're an Orthodox synagogue, they stand for every Kaddish. Feel free to stand up for every Kaddish. If you're in our synagogue, feel free to participate in our customs, because they have value too. Sometimes I see people come to our community and they continue their own custom in this area. This would certainly be an area that you can follow the communal custom. There's not a very strong halachic violation to be standing or sitting for the Kaddish. Rabbi Isaac Luria, the great Kabbalist in northern Israel in the 1500s, said, if I walk into services and they're saying Kaddish, I don't sit down. Right, which tells you a few things. That people were sitting, right, during the Kaddish. And that if you come in late, which you also learn that people came in late, but if you do, then don't sit down in the middle of the Kaddish. That is like not the right move. So if I come in the middle of a Kaddish, I don't sit down. I try to follow that teaching and use that. The mourners in our community are announced. We recite the names of people who've experienced losses on these cards. We usually say it throughout Shiva and even 9 days or so until after burial. The hope is that someone who is away for Shiva has returned to the community, and that way they will actually be present in a minyan and get to hear the name of their loved one and this moment of connecting to their loved one. And we recite the names of those who have a yortzeit on that day, meaning that this is the anniversary of their death, and so we lift their names up. Even if you're not able to make it to minyan on the day of the yortzeit, their names are still held by the community, and we always say Kaddish. So they're always being remembered. Our communal practice is, in some Orthodox communities, if no one's saying Kaddish, no one has a yortzeit, or no one's in mourning, or in their year of mourning for a parent, then they won't say Kaddish. And our practice is we always say Kaddish, even if there's no particular person. Then the leader or the Gabbai say Kaddish, and that's both because there are other people who aren't here, and certainly for the 6 million, many of whom have no one to say Kaddish for them, we always want to say the Kaddish. A particular import is to say the Kaddish slowly, and so that people can join in, and to have a leader who, make sure the Gabbai or prayer leader is leading it, because sometimes people are more or less comfortable with the text, and we want to make sure everyone can participate in Kaddish. All right, are we okay? I'm going to have to go over until like 11:25, 11:30.
Go on, Rabbi.
Just keep going. All right, so these questions are very important. I'll take them, but otherwise I want to try to run through a quick mincha marav. Marty, quick.
What if there's no minyan? Do we get to acknowledge the outside list?
Absolutely. I think, did we put it in this sheet or is it in the next class?
It's in the next one.
It's in the next class. So we're doing a class from 11:30 to 1 if anyone wants to join us for lunch, and we're talking about that. But there is, in Sidur Lev Shalem, on page 20, what is it, 28? 30, thank you, Donna. On page 30, the prayer to be recited in place of the mourner's Kaddish. And I would, make sure you recite the names of the yortzites and recite this prayer. So even if we don't have a minyan, which we've been doing pretty good, thanks to everyone. But we've had some, if there's a snowstorm and we don't have a minyan, then we still have an opportunity to lift up their memories and say that. Okay.
I just want to say that all the prayers that you've gone over for Shachrit, if you look at your outline of daily services, are in Mincha and Mariv. So
we can go faster.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Jane.
You talked about Ashrei should be said 3 times a day. Well, at this time of year where we're not doing Mincha and we're doing, quote, a rabbinic text instead of, why aren't we doing Ashrei then, since that would be the 3rd time?
Nice. So some people like to do a psalm instead of a rabbinic text. Some people, racing through the Ashrei wasn't as meaningful. It's if you want to choose as your text of study the Ashrei, you certainly could. The text of study ideally should have a biblical, and/or rabbinic based on a biblical passage in order to say Kaddish to Rabbanan. That's the tradition, which I haven't even gotten to. But in Mincha, when we don't, this time of year, you can only say Mincha from just about half an hour past midday until it gets dark. So at the darkest days in December, that's like from about 12:30 to 4. So there's not a big window for Mincha. So we do a little bit of learning and do another passage. That's really to make up for the Kaddish to Rabbanan, not to make up for Mincha, which is still a service, which, those of us who are trying to daven 3 times a day hopefully have said before. And you wouldn't get the credit for it because it would be the next day, so you wouldn't have gotten your third Ashrei because you would have missed it. But you certainly could choose that as a text if that would, if that was meaningful for people. All right, let's jump into a quick Mincha Mariv. We're sort of already there on page 4. As Beth just said, most of these texts we've already covered in Shachrit. It's just they've been rejuggled a little bit. In the summertime, from about, or late spring through summer, from about late April through August, the sun does set after 7:30, and at our normal minyan, we're able to say Mincha. On Friday nights, we start Mincha earlier and start services earlier, so we also have Mincha for more of the year. And Saturday, on Shabbat, we move Mincha from as early as 4 o'clock in the winter to as late as 8 o'clock in the summer, so that we always hit Mincha on Shabbat. On Shabbat, when there's Torah reading, and it's a more significant service. So we adjust the time of Mincha on Fridays, on Saturdays. Fridays, we have services in the winter at 5:30, in the summer at 6:15. So part of the year we get Mincha. And then Sunday through Thursdays, when the sun sets after 7:30, we can recite Mincha. If not, as Jane just said, we do a passage of study. And that's to give people who are mourners at least another Kaddish. They're the traditional Kaddish, the original Kaddish before it became the mourner's Kaddish, and the half Kaddish was for study. So ideally we have a little bit of learning, and the rabbinic texts that are in the prayer book, in the Siddur, have usually a rabbinic teaching woven around a biblical text, which is seen by the rabbis as sort of like the best kind of study because it's building on something, it's biblical and rabbinic, and then we get to say the Kaddish to Rabbanan, the Kaddish for study, which honors and appreciates students and teachers and learning, which we all value. So when we do have Mincha, you'll see that it has the Ashrei, you stand for a Chatzi Kaddish, the Amidah, usually we say it together through the Kedusha and then silently. There's a shorter version of the Tachanun. Sometimes we sing that Shomer Yisrael, which I pointed out a few minutes ago. Kaddish Shalem, Aleinu, Mourner's Kaddish, and the Mincha Yortzites are announced. This sometimes trips you up. If you have a Yortzeit for someone, and it's your, let's say, mother's Yortzeit for the next day for Mariv, and you come and it's Mincha, and you didn't hear the name, you're like, wait, but my mother's Yortzeit wasn't mentioned. That's because it's going to be mentioned in Mariv at the next service, so that can be a little bit confusing, because don't forget, the day starts at sunset, but when you have Mincha and Mariv back to back, we're associating Mincha with the previous day, and Mariv with the next day, even if the sun's not going to set. What's the latest it could be here? Like 8:15 would be the latest around these parts. Whatever time, 8:15, right, and the day hasn't yet begun, you can bring in the new day early. And by davening Mariv, it is now, you've brought in the next day.
So in the situation that I asked about before, so if we're doing Kaddish to Rabbanan, who is that 4? Is that for the Mincha people?
Great question.
Or the Mariv?
Great question. So Jane's asking, and I've been asked this many times, who is that for? Is it for the people who didn't get to say it in Mincha, or is it for the next? And the reality is, even though we're going to read the name, we don't read the names, right, because it's no longer that day, but it could be either group. For someone who said, I didn't get to say Kaddish for my loved one in Mincha, they could stand up and say it. Certainly for people who are in the year of Kaddish or 30 days of Kaddish, they can say both. And then people who are Mariv, it's technically, often it's dark, right? It's dark, so it is Mariv, they can stand up and say it. So I usually let both groups say it, the Mincha group and the Mariv group. Not a matter of letting, you can do anything you want. But I value, if they ask, I would say you can do it as you wish. Some people are less comfortable with the Kaddish Rabbanan because the Aramaic is a little bit harder and it's not as well known. Even though we have it in transliteration. So if you don't want to say it, I'm not, we don't force anyone to say it, but if you want to, you can do both.
Does that hold for the Kaddish Kabbalat Shabbat as well?
Right. So Kabbalat Shabbat is another place where this happens. It's Friday night. We're bringing in Shabbat, and we're bringing in Shabbat early in the summer, right? Which day is it? Is it Mincha or is it Mariv? And again, we leave the option in the hands of the mourners, so they could come and stand up for that one, whether their yahrzeit was at Mincha or at Mariv or both. We announce the ones of that day, so if we get that service, we announce the one that's connected to the service. Okay, so that was Mincha. Beth was right, it was easy. When Mincha is not recited, we just covered Leader's Choice, 9 through 11. If you're looking for another text, there's some other options, but those are nice texts. The Hiratzon is a beautiful kind of kavanah that brings us all together, and then Kaddish Rabbanan recited by mourners and observing yahrzeit. For Mariv, the time is chosen, I think it was chosen long before I arrived because it's after dinner, and 7:30 was a good time to come together. I assume that's why it was chosen.
And meetings couldn't start.
And meetings couldn't start. Right. So one thing we want is if we're having events in the synagogue, that we try to begin them all with minyan to support our minyan. And sometimes if you're here on a weekday minyan, you can look around and there would be 40 people here on a Wednesday night for minyan, which is an amazing thing. So that's important. One thing that is one of my favorite teachings on page 137 is that Mariv actually starts with V'hurachum. And this is traditional biblical verses that talk about, from the book of Psalms, that talk about God being compassionate and full of mercy. And we use them in a number of places. We use them actually at the burial. They're part of the Tziduk Hadin prayer at the moment of burial. They're used in a number of places in our tradition where we really want to be focused on this notion of compassion and mercy. And in Mariv in particular, they were inserted here, right, I believe, to make sure we are focused on this value of mercy and compassion. That as we're letting go of the day, we as a community approach each other with a sense of kindness and compassion. And try not to hold on to all the accumulated slights and hurts and things that went wrong. But Mariv is about letting go, and so we start with that. And most unusually, instead of the prayer leader beginning, it's the congregation that initiates by saying V'hurachum. And it's kind of strange, right? Kathy or whoever the Gabbai is will say, well, please rise for the Mariv service on page 137. And then everyone's supposed to say this line, V'hurachum. And then the prayer leader repeats it. And that's a very unusual kind of starting, system. But it indicates that the community is saying, okay, we're ready to let go of anything negative and really enter into this space and this time of Mariv. And I think it's such a beautiful teaching, and it flips around a lot of normative practices that are normally done the opposite way. The prayer leader then says V'hurachum after everyone has said it, and then takes us into the call to worship, the Baruch, and we respond, and then we're seated, and we go into the same blessings that surround the Shema that we saw a few weeks ago, about creation, revelation, and redemption, and the same practices of the Shema. One thing that's a little bit confusing is tzitzit. We don't wear a talit in the Mariv service, which is why when you get to the third paragraph of the Shema, you don't start kissing your tzitzit, even if you're wearing a talit katan or some other talit. Or if you're leading the service and it's a Friday night and you are wearing a talit, you don't use the tzitzit. Tzitzit are a mitzvah that you need to see, and they can only see when there was daylight. So this is a mitzvah that only applied during the day, not a nighttime mitzvah, which is why we don't all wear talitot at the Mariv service. Only the prayer leader wears one on Shabbat and holidays, because Shabbat and holidays have an extra level of grandeur and significance, and the prayer leader sort of creates that ambiance and that mood. The prayer leader, by the way, does wear a talit when leading mincha, but again, no one else does. Unless there's Torah reading, and the Torah reader does, or people coming up for an aliyah, or to lift the Torah. And so those are interesting things. If you're davening mincha outside of the shul, and there's no Torah scroll, then the leader does not wear a talit. Right? So it's interesting how the space sort of informs some of these practices. And for example, tachanun, you don't do this prostration if you're reciting services in a place where there is no Torah scroll. So if you're out, davening in nature, and it comes to tachanun, then you don't engage in all those practices. Yeah.
So after Yom Kippur, when we daven Ma'ariv, people remove their talit before Ma'ariv. But if you're already wearing a talit, it seems you should keep it on. So it's not required, but if you're wearing it, why not wear it?
Right. It's kind of a confusing the way we do it, because we haven't fully ended Yom Kippur, because we haven't sounded the shofar. Traditionally, you would sound the shofar, and then you would daven Ma'ariv, and then you would eat. But it's hard to hold people after you've sounded the shofar, so we do it this way. I would say usually leave your talit on, because we're still experiencing some of that holiness straight through to the shofar blast. And so kind of hold on to that feeling and take it off. But, people can do it either way. So there is a beautiful prayer that's added in Ma'ariv. It's different from Shacharit, and that's on 140, the Hashkivenu. We don't have time to look at the text in Hebrew or English, but it's about, when we need that help, right? There's all kinds of things in our lives that are challenging. There's war, there's illness, there's all kinds of struggles. And this prayer acknowledges those and states them explicitly and asks for help and for protection and for this sense of comfort. And that God help us lie down in peace. Sometimes we're stressed and it's hard to even fall asleep. This is a great prayer to use, written for that moment. We add on 140 and 141 this additional bracha, blessing of compilation of biblical verses. I'll speak more about this in the Lunch and Learn that's coming up, because it has a nice connection to if you're at a house of mourning. And then the service has a Chatzi Kaddish to distinguish between the two pieces, between the Shema and the Amidah. Don't forget the Amidah of Ma'ariv was originally an optional Amidah, wasn't done in community, was done at home privately. So they put in the Chatzi Kaddish to tell you this is not like Shacharit, where you're going right in from the Shema. And they had a very nice teaching about that. They said in Shacharit, Tzarich lismoch geula letfilah. You need to put redemption right next to your prayers, to the Amidah. And that's because you want to set off on your day and be filled with, these are the great things I'm going to do in the world and make this world a better place. And so you're taking that feeling right into the Amidah. Whereas in Ma'ariv, you can't keep thinking about things to do. There's a time to stop and to let go. And Ma'ariv is saying, pause here, we're going to say a Kaddish. Yeah, we still need a redeemed world, but it's the end of the day. And I need to stop being focused on all the things I need to do. And I'm entering this Amidah with a little bit of a different feeling. And so they placed that Chatzi Kaddish right there. All of that takes us through the Amidah, which we've already covered. And where do we land with? And we land again with the Kaddish Shalem, Aleinu, and the Mourner's Kaddish, which we've already covered. Wow, only 8 minutes late, not bad. Maybe next time we do this, we'll have 4 sessions. Those who want to stick around for a couple of minutes of questions, I'm happy to stick around. Those who need to go, thank you so much for participating, for bringing your interest, your inquiries, your inquisitiveness, and hopefully this will add to your experience of any time you come to our minyan or any minyan, that you can feel comfortable, more comfortable participating, and hopefully this inspires you to keep deepening your learning of the tefillot. The more I study the prayers, the more I find their richness and how much they can add to our lives. Beth, thank you.
I think most of the people in this room are pretty familiar with the service, but I just want to point out that on the shelf for quite a while now, a couple of years, there have been what we call bookmarks. One for afternoon and evening and one for the morning. And it's different from the handout you have here. What it is the actual choreography of exactly what's going to happen during the service. It tells you where the leader's going to pick up, when it's silent, when it's all together. And these were made in order for someone who's unfamiliar to be comfortable. There are people who've never come into weekday services because they think, I don't know what to do, I don't know when we stand, I don't know when we sit, I don't know when we're together, when we're silent. And these go page by page exactly what's going to happen. It varies a little by the leader because we lay led, so every leader is a little bit different. So these are not actually meant to take home because you need them here with your siddur during the service. But I do see people, particularly people who are visiting, or there's some people who come who are not Jewish, but they're here, and they feel very comfortable. I see them quietly pick one up, and they follow it along and put it back when they're done. So if anyone ever says to you, I don't go because I don't know what's gonna happen, come with them and give them one of these to go by.
And that's only for the weekday?
Yes.
So I'm happy to stick around. I know some people need to go, so I'll just stick around for those who want to ask questions. So Darabah, if there are things you want to review, they'll be posted on the website. You can feel free to watch them on YouTube. And look forward to seeing everyone in Shul and in Minyan. And always don't forget at the end of Minyan to sign into Minyan. That's my final teaching. Signing off.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.